All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated, please. Madam Court, or Mr. Court Officer, please call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is the file number case CBC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasniqi. Thank you, Your Honors.
The accused are all present in court today. We will continue now the hearing of the evidence of prosecution witness W01511. Madam Court Usher, please bring the witness in. Good morning, Mr. Thaçi.
Good morning.
Today we're going to continue your testimony. I remind you to please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask the counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will clarify. Also, please remember to try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of the facts and circumstances upon which you will be questioned. I remind you that you are still under an obligation to tell the truth as stated by you in your solemn declaration. Please also remember to speak into the microphone and to wait 5 seconds before answering a question and speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. If you feel the need to take breaks, please make an indication and we will accommodate you. We continue now with the questions by the Thaçi defense. Mr. Misitich has the floor. Please give him your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning again, witness.
Good morning.
Witness, we left off yesterday talking about the meeting on the 2nd of September where members of the general staff were present. And I'd like to show you a document which is Exhibit 1D00102, please. And witness, what I'm going to show you is a newspaper interview in Zedi in November of 1999 given by Bislam Zarapi about that meeting. And if we could go to page 8 in both versions, please. If we could scroll down to the part that begins with the question, where did you meet and what did you speak about with Tahir Zemai? And Mr. Zarapi says, we held the meeting in a school in the village of Bardanic, where the brigade was also stationed. At the meeting, we drew Tahir's attention to the fact that in an army, there is no voting by villages or members of the public, and that appointments are made top-down. I told Tahir that he knew how appointments are to be made in the army in accordance with the rules of service, so we told him that a commander could only be appointed by the main staff. Then we gathered the villages together, including the villages concerned, and after a long meeting, we persuaded them that they had no right to vote for and appoint a military leader. After the meeting with the villages, we returned to the meeting in Bardanic. Then I read out the statement of the main staff that the commander of the Dukajin operation zone was Ramush Haradinai, as appointed by the senior military leadership, and that Tahir Zema could be Ramush's deputy. Tahir Zema did not accept the posting. He had a satellite telephone close by and called Ahmed Krasniqi, informing him of everything that had happened. Now, first, let me stop there. Does that refresh your recollection as to what was discussed at the meetings in Bardanic?
Po,
Yes, and I mentioned this yesterday as well.
Zarapi's recollection in 1999 consistent with your own recollection of what was discussed at this meeting?
disarene på.
Parts of it, yes. However, this is only a statement given to a newspaper, Zuri. But I am not convinced that I heard him speaking to Tahir about how a commander is chosen. Secondly, after that meeting, the villages in the municipality of Thaçi never came together. We had a rally meeting only when Tahir Zema was chosen. So it is impossible that I would not know of a meeting of villages and commanders of villages after this meeting. So there was no other meeting or rally after this one,
Have no
Sa adiun.
to my knowledge.
of the fact that the general staff members met with members of the villages, with the leaders of the villages. Is that correct?
Jo,
Correct. Correct.
News. He says, then Hashim Thaçi and I spoke with Ahmed Krasniqi on the telephone. I said to Ahmed, how can you have voting for a commander when there is a main staff in Kosovo? Ahmed replied, you guys take care of your own business and don't interfere with my officers. I then said to him, sir, these are KLA officers. And he replied, no, they're my officers, and you have no business interfering. Now, you have no knowledge personally of what was discussed between Bislam Zarapi and Ahmed Krasniqi, correct?
Bislimi s'ka marrë pjesësh në ato.
Bislim was not present in those moments at all. Only Hashim and Tahir were there. Bislim was with us. He knows better why he stated this.
Bislam Zarapi was with Mr. Thaçi when they were speaking with Ahmed Krasniqi on the satellite phone, correct?
Unë e di që ka qenë me Thaçin.
I know that he was with Thaçi when they arrived. But when they spoke with Ahmed Krasniqi, it was only Tahir Zemay and Hashim Thaçi. And we all others who were in the vicinity, in the proximity. But he was with us.
Për Zirapin.
When I say he, I'm referring to Zirapi.
It says, we went back to the meeting and said that he should stay, meaning Tahir Zemay, should stay as deputy commander of the zone. He said he would not accept these assignments and would remain commander of the 131 Brigade based in Prapachan. We then decided that he would remain commander of this brigade, but on condition that he was not to enter into any kind of civilian affairs as he had done before. Now, first of all, do you recall that Bislam Zarapi went back into the meeting and told Tahir Zemay that he could be deputy commander, but that Tahir Zemay rejected that appointment?
Nuk jem konë në takim.
I was not in that meeting. I'm hearing this for the first time today.
Do you recall Bislam Zarapi telling Tahir Zemay that he could remain the commander of the 131 Brigade, but on condition that he not enter into any kind of civilian affairs as he had done before?
Sa jam unë ndjeni,
To my knowledge, this is not true. That he did say that to him.
Correct?
kush, po unë e di rrjedhat se më ka thonë
I know how things unfolded because Tahir told me about it and the other officers were alive. After they returned, Tahir consulted with Ahmed Krasniqi and we are Bukoshi, the government in exile, through a satellite phone. We then received the order to withdraw, an order from the government.
When I asked you an earlier question, you said, I was not in that meeting. Correct?
po, thash,
Correct.
Now, he continues in that interview. He says, after that, as you know, the offensive started, and Tahir withdrew all the troops, abandoned the front line, and handed over a large arsenal of weaponry. Now, I'd like to talk about the withdrawal of the forces. And you told the SPO in your interview that Tahir Zemay decided to withdraw his troops in conjunction with the Bukoshi government in exile, and specifically Ahmed Krasniqi, correct?
po,
Correct.
To withdraw those troops was made by Tahir Zemay together with Ahmed Krasniqi, correct?
po,
Correct.
I withdrew his forces because the promises he originally received from Bukoshi's government were not kept, correct?
sakt,
Correct.
The SPO that Zemay did not receive supplies promised by Bukoshi's government, correct?
shumë e vërtet,
Correct. All the promises made by Bukoshi and Ahmed Krasniqi when Tahir Zemay joined the front line were not kept, and we did not receive any supplies or logistics. I have stated this to the prosecutor. To make it clearer, I had a meeting with Buyar Bukoshi and the American diplomatic mission. I think the minutes of that meeting should be found. Buyar Bukoshi, Ahmet Krasniqi, and Rustem Tetay through a satellite phone. Everything is in there. All the weapons received by Ahmet Krasniqi were blocked in Tirana. Because of political reasons or other reasons, I wouldn't know. However, the government came up with a decision, we came up with a decision. We were ordered to withdraw 1,500 soldiers who were left without weaponry. We had light weapons, but not heavy weaponry. No ammunition. We came up with a decision that we could not resist with that shortage of weaponry. Therefore, the decision was made by the government in exile and Ahmet Krasniqi to withdraw in the interest of the KLA and the war.
I appreciate you answering my questions, Mr. President. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. O'Reilly?
Good morning, witness. My name is Annie O'Reilly,
Good morning.
Cadre Vaselli. I only have a limited amount of questions for you today, perhaps half an hour or so, so it won't take quite so long. A lot of the topics have been covered already. Nonetheless, there's a few things that I need to go back into briefly. And we've touched on the first issue already yesterday, so just bear with me. I want to talk about the early organisation in 1998 after the attack on the Haradinai compound on the 24th of March 1998. Now, it sounds like you started your own organisation in the village of Baran quite soon after this, is that right?
Yo,
No,
Baran.
Baran, in Glojan. We set up the Glojan stuff after the attack, if I understood the interpretation correctly.
Yeah, witness, I believe we're talking across purposes. Perhaps it will help if I just simply get your Haradinai testimony onto the screen, and that's IT 0484 T3597 to T3689 at page 3626 in the English, and for the Albanian it's at page 32. So what I'm trying to talk to you about, witness, is actually the organisation that you undertook in your own village, being a former JNA officer and the person that everybody looked to for protection and organisation during these early days. And you were asked, are we on the right page? Yeah, so starting at line 13 in the English, you were asked, what did your village do to get organised? And you said, as I said, we had a meeting. We decided to appoint some guards, night guards, and they had no weapons initially. For everything, I told them to report to me for everything. We improvised a system through which the roads leading into and out of the village would be guarded. Question, did you have checkpoints or organized checkpoints on the road leading into your village? Answer, yes, that was what I said. A checkpoint is a big word for what we did. It was a very simple operation. There was one guard. It wasn't a checkpoint in a real sense, in the military sense of the word. Now, witness, do you recall this testimony in Haradinai?
Po.
Yes. If I'm allowed, however, I would like to add something. I have never seen Kadir Veseli other than here and on television. Since I hadn't seen him and he wasn't in the war zone, please, I have nothing to say in relation to him, and I've stated this to the prosecutor. Only with respect to Hashim Thaçi, whom I met, and Recep Selimi in Yablaniец, in which regard I've made a statement, I would only speculate if I were to say anything with respect to Jakub and Kadir Veseli.
Any questions about any of that yet? Please just answer Ms. O'Reilly's questions, and we'll get through your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honour.
I just wish to make a clarification. I cannot anticipate what will be said later. But what you just read is accurate. What I've stated is accurate.
Strange to you that I'm asking questions. I'm actually not going to ask you any questions about Mr. Veseli. There are some background matters that you can help with that have to do with the case generally. We should get through it quickly if you just focus on the questions and answer them as briefly as you can. So you had also said that you talked about, the availability of weapons and uniforms over the summer period. And I'll read you what you said. You said, I suppose in my village, I was the first and last person to have one, a uniform that is. The whole rest of the village was civilian. Those people who managed to buy a weapon for themselves, they had it. But the rest of the village were civilians. I was the only person in uniform. And the question was asked, are you saying that remained the position until you yourself left Kosovo in September? And you asked, we're talking about the village, my village. And the questioner says, yes, yes. Are you saying, let me put the question to you. And you said, in my village, from the moment I left, yes, yes, continue with this, yes. From the moment I left Kosovo with the soldiers of FARC, I was the only man in uniform in my village. Do you recall saying that in Haradinai?
Po.
Yes, I recall it.
Is it accurate?
Vërtet.
It is.
Finally, on this topic, you've confirmed for us a few times yesterday and in your prior statements, including in Haradinai, that there was fighting and shelling going on the whole time during this period into that part of Dugajin, just to the east of the road. Is that right?
Po.
Yes.
Now we're going to move forward to the creation of the zone, such as it was, around the 23rd of June, 1998. And this is the meeting that you do recall in Jablanica. You said anyway that you recalled it yesterday. And it's the one where you proposed Ramush as the commander. Do you recall saying that?
E vërtet.
That's true.
Now, Ramesh was not a former JNA officer, was he?
Drejt.
That's correct.
But that's it. He didn't stick around for officer training thereafter. Are you aware of that?
Kom dëgjuar.
I heard. I've heard. Yes.
Former JNA officer, you endorsed him. You supported his candidature, didn't you? And witness, there wasn't a candidate.
Excuse me, he didn't answer.
Apologies, witness, we didn't get your answer on the transcript. I was just asking you to confirm that you did endorse his candidature as commander for the Duke Zone.
Po.
Yes.
And in fact, there wasn't a candidate being put forward by Bukoshi or Ahmed Krasniqi in the Duke Zone at this time, was there?
Jo.
There wasn't.
Or there was Lahi, two local guys, and you backed Ramesh.
Po.
Correct.
Could we go to the document, which is 1D185, and we'll go to page 4 of the English and 5 in the Albanian. Now, what I want to ask about are those two lists of appointments. So if we could get those both clearly on the screen, that would be great. Now, we've already talked about this a bit. There are three in particular that are interesting. So you are listed here as being the new Deputy Chief of Staff to Sally Viselli. You see that, witness?
Po.
For the English,
Yes.
or perhaps down further. Sorry, witness, just one moment. Right. So yes, so we can see that you are listed as Deputy Chief of Staff. And if we go down a little bit further, we have anti-armoured unit combat and it's Skenderi. Do you know which Skender that is?
Më duket fjala për sken.
I think this is Skender Reja Ahmedai, an officer.
Muhammad Barisha for chemical and biological defence. And I think you said you don't know who this Muhammad is. Is that right?
Mohamed Berisha.
Mohamed Berisha. Never seen him. I don't know who this person is.
Already explained to us that these appointments were formal only. Is that right?
Takimin e Jablanicës që to që pëshon në
In the meeting in Jablanica, the hand what I see in handwritten form are the proposals made there, a meeting during which people voted the structure of the staff of the Ducagini plane.
Right. So it was done by way of an election, essentially. Is that what you're saying?
Po,
Yes.
And you have said that while you were appointed Deputy Chief of Staff, in reality, what you did was you went back to dealing with logistics for setting up the Propachan barracks. Do you recall saying that?
e vërtet.
That's true.
And incidentally, the Propachan barracks was the only proper training facility in Ducagene at that time, wasn't it?
Po,
Correct.
Should have effectively gifted it to Tahir Zemai's brigade when he entered, didn't he? He allowed Tahir Zemai's brigade to take up that barracks.
po,
Yes. There were no objections to that.
Thank you, witness. Now back to those appointments. Skender Recep Metai was never effectively dealing with anti-tank combat, was he? Anti-tank combat wasn't something the KLA were dealing with at that point, was it? Would you mind saying your answer out loud so we have it for the transcript, witness?
po.
Yes.
Ne këto emrimi kemi
Listen, these appointments were made because we're thinking that probably after a certain period of time we were going to have heavy weaponry, and that is the reason why we were just planning, we're anticipating these appointments. So this is the reason why you can see the name of Skender Recep Metai there, but the fact and the matter was that there were no tanks.
Describe that appointment as effectively meaningless. Would you agree with those words today?
zgjedhja si zgjedhje është e mirë.
So the solution itself was good. It was good for us to come up with these positions so that people would build trust in us. However, these types of appointments needed weaponry, they needed regular formations of an army in order for everyone to take up their positions and their tasks. So these were the only people that we had, the only staff that we had for the moment, before Tahir Zemai joined us. But we were hoping that things would get better and something will happen. So that was something that we were doing in terms of raising the morale. Once again, I am telling you that I have taken part in 5 battles in the Ducagini plain. Personally, I've taken part in this many battles without Tahir Zemai being part of it, before Tahir Zemai came and joined us. So I was part of 5 battles myself. The morale itself was high. But allow me to clarify, please. But the arrival of the general staff damaged us greatly. It damaged us in terms of the morale, in terms of the supplies. So that is something that you have to know.
Period.
Për atë kohë.
I'm talking about that time.
I'm going to read you one last passage from your Hardini transcript, and you can tell me whether it remains accurate as of today. You said, in reality, I'm sorry to say this, but in reality, I also said yesterday we use words, a lot of words like headquarters, commander. These are titles, unfortunately. I I do not want to lower the value of what the KLA did because we started from scratch. The ideas were good, which is what you were just saying just now. However, the use of these names was fictitious for that particular moment. Do you still stand by those words? Those are your words from the Haradinaj trial. Just yes or no?
Po për me folë vërtetën,
Well, that was my stance back then, and I stand by those words. Just allow me, please. So I have to elaborate my answers.
Don't. I'm asking questions. I'm trying to get through them in the time allotted to me. I'd like to move on now to Fatan Mehmetai's role. If we look at these two lists in front of us in Albanian and English, we see that Fatan Mehmetai is actually listed as information service. Now, there's also been some reference to him being ZKZ,
cool.
which is intelligence.
Where's that?
That is about 1/3 to 1/2 the way down the list. Sherbim Informativ. Do you see that?
Po,
Yes, I found it.
Between information and intelligence, that is ZKZ.
sipas meje, shërbimi informativ
In my opinion, the information service has to do with collection of information in the ground. It also is related to covering the developments of the war so that it is able to inform the opinion, the public, the other instances, including here the staff. This is how I understand information as a service. Whereas when it comes to the ZKZ, that has to do mainly with the enemy forces, with the Serb forces. So the service has to identify where the enemy forces are located, what kind of weapons they use, what kind of strategies they use. However, like I said, Fatan Mehmeti was a joker all the time because nobody exactly knew what position he had. He has been involved in every type of work there was out there, but there was no real function attached to him. And I'm not talking about written functions because there were plenty of written functions, but in reality, I am not aware what he has done. I'm sure that Ramush is not aware what he has done during the war, and I'm sure that the people that are in this court do not know what he has done during the war. That's my opinion about that person.
Could we please have SBOE 00225760 in English and Albanian on the screen? This document is going to take us forward 10 days in time to the 2nd of July 1998. And it's a document signed by Ramush Haradinaj, which we'll see in a moment. We can scroll down so we can get Ramush's signature on it. Thank you. And you can see the date there. And it reads, it's addressed, as you can see, to the General Staff of the KLA. And it reads, this is to inform you that the meeting held in Jablanica on the 23rd of June 1998 elected the commander of the operational staff of the Dukagjini Plain, the deputy commander, chief of staff, and the deputy chief of staff, which is you. And then your names are provided. Now, would you agree with me that this indicates that the General Staff did not, as you know, have anything to do with the formation of the Dukagjini Plain? That was done locally within the Dukagjini zone by Dukagjini people.
Yes.
Thank you. Could I have that document tendered into evidence, please?
Any objection?
No, no objection.
Yes, SPOE 00225760 in English and Albanian is admitted.
And this will be assigned exhibit number 2D0026, classified as confidential. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, there's just one last topic that I want to cover with you briefly. And that has to do with Sania Balai. Do you recall who Sania Balai is?
Nuk e kom njoft, është një vaj.
I did not know her back then. She is a lady from Strets. I don't want to recall the old memories, but I agree to everything that I have said in my statement about her. So I have stated the same thing at the trial against Ramush Haradinaj. Therefore, if you speak about this matter and if you ask the questions, I have the impression like you are here in a trial against Ramush rather than the general staff of the KLA.
Çdo gjë që kom thënë,
Everything that I've said, I stand by it about her as well, including Ramush Haradinaj.
You said in P1593 at page U0029308 is rumors say that Fatan Mehmetai and Met Krasniqi from the village of Ranat were also involved in this crime. Allegedly, Met Krasniqi and others arrested and detained her on the order of Fatan Mehmetai. Now, did you ever actually read the Haradinaj judgment?
jo.
No, I didn't. I know that he's free, but that's all. I know that there was a final court decision about him.
Sania Balai part, not the Ramush part, as it were. There are two aspects of that that I'd like you to comment on. The judgment actually dealt extensively with her murder. Now, first of all, is that the trial panel in that case identifies someone as Galani as being responsible for her killing. Now, do you recall in your prep session, the prep note of which is P1592, 1595, is that right? Page 2, paragraph 8, you refer to Alusha Gushi as perhaps being Galani. Do you recall saying that?
Jo, nuk kujtohet.
No, I don't recall that.
Please, it's P1595. We're going to page 2, paragraph 8. And you're talking about who is present at this meeting. And halfway down it says, W01511 was not sure if Alushagushi, who he believes was called Galani, was present at the meeting. Does that refresh your recollection?
Po ashtu është.
Yes. I did not know this person, but there was no one going by the name of Galani.
Identifies Galani as someone called Idris Gashi, and that's at paragraph 337 of the trial judgment for those in court. Does that refresh your recollection?
Nuk e di, nuk muna me.
I don't know that. I can't add anything here. I don't know.
That he was convicted domestically of her killing.
Për cilin është fjala?
What are you talking about? Who are you referring to?
Could you
E di
wait,
që një
witness? Ms. O'Reilly and witness both, you're talking over each other, and it's making it very difficult to understand. Please start over.
Witness, are you aware that Idris Gashi, aka Golani, was convicted of Sania Balai's murder?
po jam një djeni.
Yes, I am aware. I know that there was a trial held, but I didn't know this person.
Wanted to ask you about was that in all of the trial chambers discussion of the murder, and there are two judgments on this, are you aware that the only link made to Fatan Mehmetai was provided by you? Just yes or no, witness.
Jo, duhet më sharue.
I have to explain. I have spoken about Faton Mehmetai.
Are you
Yes.
the only person cited in those judgments that linked the murder of Sania Balai to Fatan Mehmetai? Yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. How could the witness possibly know this?
You may answer the question if you know, witness.
Jo,
No. No. I'm not aware.
And having not read the judgment, let me just read to you what the trial chamber found. The trial chamber found that Sania Balai was targeted by people who were not acting under the direction of or in pursuit of the policy of the KLA, and that she was therefore not killed in KLA custody. And similarly, the retrial chamber could not conclude who was responsible for her murder. Are you aware of those conclusions?
jo.
No.
Thank you, Ms. O'Reilly. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing from me at this time.
All right, Mr. Ellis?
Yes, I do have some questions, but it will be relatively short, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good morning, witness. My name's Aidan Ellis, and I represent Mr. Jakub Kuznici.
Images.
Good morning.
You confirmed already this morning at line 17 of the provisional transcript at page 9 that you would only be speculating if you were to say anything with respect to Jakub Kuznici. And that's because you didn't see him during the conflict, did you?
That's a fact.
Just so that I'm clear about the dates, it's right, isn't it, that it was between mid and the end of April 1998 that you went to Glajan to join the KLA?
Po,
Yes.
8th of September 1998 when you left the Dukajini zone. Is that right?
po me vendim.
Yes. Upon a decision of the government of the Republic of Kosovo.
Now, I want to go through with you a paragraph from your preparation session, and we can have it on screen. It's P1595 at page 6, paragraph 21. Thank you. And it's only in English, so I'll read the relevant bits for you, witness. It says, W01511, that's you, clarified that Memetai told him that he was very close to Jakub Kuznici in 1998 when Jakub Kuznici was appointed public spokesman. Now, in terms of the date, that would refer to mid-June 1998 when Jakub Kuznici was appointed as the spokesperson for the KLA. Is that right?
Yes. It was in mid-June, and we had those types of talks, but I've never seen Jakub Kuznici myself.
And you've told us already that Faton Memetai was a great joker. You said again today, I think at transcript page 17, line 12, that he was a joker. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So right that you did not trust Faton Memetai, isn't it?
I did not trust him because in all the structures at the staff and everywhere else, he was present. He was not invited, but he was present nonetheless. Why that happened, I don't know.
And Jakub Kuznici together, have you?
Good.
Never.
You never saw or heard Faton Memetai speaking to Jakub Kuznici on the telephone, did you?
Yo.
I did not.
And put simply, you cannot confirm personally whether Faton Memetai was actually in contact with Jakub Kuznici or not, can you?
Yo.
I cannot.
And you already confirmed earlier today at page 17 in the page 17 in the provisional transcript that you're sure that the people in this court do not know what he, Faton Memetai, has done during the war, and that would include Jakub Kuznici, wouldn't it?
I think they do not know. So, whereas when it comes to telephone calls or communications, they know it themselves. The only thing that I know is that Faton Mehmeta has told me orally that he is in contact with him. I do remember what he told me back then. It was at the time when he was appointed as the spokesperson of the KLA. I know nothing more about his contact with Faton Mehmeta.
Memetai was bragging, or whether he was telling the truth, you do not know, do you?
No, I do not.
Those were all my questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Quick, any redirect?
No, thank you.
Judge Barta? We'll take the break 5 minutes early so that we don't start and stop immediately. We'll give you a 20-minute break, or 10-minute break. You may leave the courtroom with the court attendant.
Yeah.
We're adjourned for 10 minutes.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated. Madam Usher, please bring the witness in. Witness, the panel will have some questions for you. We begin with Judge Barta, who's to my left and your right.
Thank you, Judge Smith, and good morning, witness.
Medita.
Good morning.
Homir.
Yes, I can.
The panel, witness, has a couple of questions for you about issues that, in our view, need further clarification. And my questions concern the notes the prosecution has prepared about your preparation session. And I would like to start with preparation note 1, which was admitted yesterday as exhibit P01595. And perhaps we could have this note on the screen, Mr. Court Officer. Thank you. Please go to paragraph 6 on the second page. Witness, I'm aware that this is only in English, but I will try to explain to you what was written in this note. And according to this note, to this paragraph, you discussed with the prosecution the three different entities, namely the Glogan staff, the Ducagini Plain staff, and the general staff. And you said, according to the note to the prosecution, that you had heard about the general staff but believed it was almost a fiction because you did not personally see them until the meeting at Jabal. And witness, this is my first question. When did you first become aware that a KLA or that a general staff of the KLA actually existed?
In the
meeting at Jebel.
Can you state for the record when that meeting was again, please?
I don't recall the date. I have forgotten. It was mentioned several times. However, this was the meeting in the village of Jebel when Hashim Thaçi came and gave us our new positions and tasks.
or September 1998?
Ngushti,
I think it was August.
Sorry.
sa jam unë ndjeni ngusht.
To my knowledge, it was August, not September. And mid-August or end of August.
Thank you. And according to the last sentence here in paragraph 6, you told the prosecution that you did not accept the general staff, did not trust them then, and do not trust them now. I would like to know, who are you referring to here? Which member or members of the KLA general staff?
Ja, unë e kom pas fjalën për
I was referring to the general staff of the Kosovo Liberation Army. Because I only trust the state of Kosovo, the government and the institutions of Kosovo at the time. We are talking about the wartime. Because within a year, many people were within the general staff. There were subsequent replacements, so I wouldn't know how many people were members of the general staff of the KLA.
lakue.
Many names were mentioned, and not only the names of those who are here, but in general.
Referring to the general staff as an institution, not to a specific person, is that right? What you were saying?
Po.
Correct.
Understood. I'd like to move on to paragraph 8 of preparation note 1. In this paragraph, you talked about a meeting in Jablanice with representatives of 3 villages and Faton Mehmetai, Lahi Braimai, and Pieter Shala, who were all present during that meeting. And you said, this is the second last sentence of that paragraph to the prosecution, according to this note, that you had heard rumors before this meeting that people were abducted and taken to Jablanice. And you also heard that there was a KLA local staff in Jablanice. Do you remember saying this to the prosecution during your session, preparation session?
Po.
Yes, I recall. Because every village had their own local staff. This is the first reason. Secondly, I only heard about people being detained. I did not see that happening myself. We are referring to this period of time.
Recall. And you answered with yes, that's right. So please wait for the second question. My second question is the following. Where and when did you hear this? Who told you that people were abducted and taken to Jablanice?
Në takimi që konë mbajt me këta persona.
In the meeting held with these persons in the village of Pojar, so from that moment onwards, I don't know the date, but it was the beginning of the war.
And who told you that there was a local staff of the KLA in Jablanice? Where did you hear this?
Po ishte vetë prezent.
Lahi Ibrahim, I was present in the meeting in question, And we had taken the decision for every village to have their own local staffs.
Just to clarify, am I right in assuming that what you heard or had heard before the meeting, namely that people were abducted and taken to Jablanica by the KLA and not by other armed groups? Is that what you heard?
I don't know about that. Because the KLA was in the process of being formed.
I will ask you again, what did you hear? You said you heard rumors before the meeting that people were abducted, and I'm asking you, were people abducted according to these rumors by the KLA or by another armed group or by the Serbian authorities, Serbian forces? What did you hear?
At that time, these were rumors, hearsay, things that were spoken, talked about. I already mentioned that I did not see these things myself.
Witness, I understood that, but I'm asking, what were the rumors? So were the rumors that people were abducted by the KLA or by the Serbian forces or by other armed groups? Or so what did you hear?
We, at the time, thought that the abductions were rather done by also Serbian military and police forces who were on the ground, but I have also stated before that in relation to this, I've only heard rumors or hearsay. I cannot explain any further what I have not seen myself.
Thank you. I would like to move on to paragraph 10 of preparation note 1. In this paragraph, or according to this paragraph, you told the prosecution during your preparation session that you personally saw a list with the names of several individuals, and these individuals were, as you said according to this note, still active in the LDK and the Democratic Christian Party, and were for political pluralism in the society, or of the society. And you said that these lists, or such lists, were being posted on the poles of streetlights in the villages where the KLA was beginning to be organized. And you also said, according to paragraph 10 to the prosecution, that the lists, or these lists, did not identify the source, but you knew that it was from, or these lists came from Faton Mehmetai. Is that right? Did you tell this to the prosecution during your preparation session?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to know from you now, how did you know that these lists were prepared by or came from Faton Mehmetai? Was it because he had a typewriter, as you said yesterday?
Simply because we had several meetings in his house and he was writing things down using those typewriters he had in his house. I said this in general terms.
Thank you. Are there any other reasons why you believe that these lists came from Mr. Mehmetai? Apart from that he had the fact that he had a typewriter and prepared lists or documents in his house.
during my stay, every document was typed in his house.
Thank you. I would like to go on and move to paragraph 11, a little bit further down, Mr. Court Officer. In that paragraph, according to this paragraph, you told the prosecution that ICTY witnesses, prosecution witnesses, were called spies and traitors, and that people, I quote, who completed the military academy always had problems with the general staff during the war, end of quote. Do you remember saying this to the prosecution, that people had problems, always had problems with the general staff if they completed the military academy?
I did say this, but I said this after the meeting and the events in Jablanica and when we learned about the general staff having been formed. And this was after the difficulties, the challenges and divergences between FARC and the KLA. Whereas in fact, our goal was the same. We were all unified. We did not have any problems until the moment the general staff came and created problems for us. This is my answer.
I'd like to know now from you, why did, in your view, from what you know or knew, why did people who completed the military academy have such problems with the KLA general staff? What was the problem?
In my opinion, this was about career. At a time when the country was not liberated yet, so this was about positions, posts, nothing else. Or, again, in my opinion, we learned later on that the armed forces from Albania were getting ready to enter, and they were all career officers within these forces. As a result of this, again, in my opinion, problems appeared.
Thank you. And could we please go to the next page, paragraph 12. Witness, according to paragraph 12 of preparation note 1, you told the prosecution during your preparation session that you were not certain, but you were 90% sure that Mr. Recep Selimi was also present at the meeting at Jabel. Do you remember saying this to the prosecution, that you were 90% sure but not certain that he was there, Mr. Selimi?
That's correct. I'm still not certain that Recep Selimi was present because the uniform was different. I stated this at the time. However, it is possible also that he was present. I am not certain, though, because I did not see. I'm not able to say for certain that he was in that meeting.
You just said you were not certain because the uniform was different. Could you explain what you mean by that? So I'm asking about the remaining 10%, why you're not 100% certain that he was there? Why only 90%?
We had all the same uniform, the KLA uniform. And what I meant is that a man wearing a uniform has a different appearance. So we had not had frequent meetings or frequent enough to recognize people. we had not had prior frequent meetings to be able to recognize the person.
Thank you. Could we go to paragraph 15, Mr. Court Officer, please? Thank you. Witness, in this paragraph, you spoke about meeting Mr. Hashim Thaçi 3 times during the war, and you also discussed that yesterday with the prosecution and the defense for Mr. Thaçi, and it is recorded here that you had a meeting with Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Serapi in your office at the Prabakan barracks, and during that meeting Mr. Thaçi was in, as you said, to the prosecution according to the note, in civilian clothes, and Mr. Serapi was wearing a uniform, a KLA uniform. Is this still your evidence?
That's correct.
Thaçi, as far as you can remember, carry a weapon. Did he have a weapon with him?
He did not carry a weapon when he was wearing civilian clothes. The only person wearing a uniform, military clothes, was Bislim Zirabi. I don't know if he had concealed the weapon under his jacket or anything, but no, he was wearing normal civilian clothes and behaved normally, to my recollection.
And were the two accompanied by other soldiers?
There were other soldiers, but they were from the Prabachan barracks. I was not able to single out any other soldier that would have been accompanying them other than Bislim Zirabi.
And you said, according to the preparation note, that at the time you did not know what Mr. Thaçi's position was and had never heard of him before. Is that right?
That's right.
Were you aware who Mr. Serapi was?
I knew that he was an officer, a colleague, that he had joined the war effort, like I did, but I didn't know his position, despite the fact that I was in contact with him. I did not ask him, nor did he tell me.
Thank you. Did you know at the time whether Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Serapi were members of the KLA General Staff? Did you know that?
No.
Did you know, or do you know now, whether Mr. Thaçi was using a nickname, a nom de guerre, during the war?
Now I know. After the war. During the war, yes, I know.
And what was the nickname he used?
Jarpuri.
Jarpuri.
Just to get the record straight, you said, according to our record now, during the war, yes, you knew. So you were aware that Mr. Thaçi was using a nickname during the war as well?
Not really during the war, but as we were getting out and through the media, in the papers, I heard that his nickname was Jarbri, and also in some books written after the war.
And witness, this is the last sentence on this page, paragraph 4, or in paragraph 15. It said here, they talked about the war. I assume that you are referring or were referring here to Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Serapi, is that right?
Po.
Yes.
And what did they talk about? Did they talk about the war in general, or did they talk about a specific issue, like the situation on the ground in your area of responsibility, or what was the topic of that conversation?
Gjitha këto nuk mu I di.
I am not able to know all of this. However, there were meetings because at the time we discussed the war organizational matters, and also one of the topics was the LDK, Ibrahim Rugova. I don't really recall the details of it. So this was a fair, quiet conversation. Thaçi spoke more than we did, and that's all I know. I don't recall more than that.
Thank you. The second and third time you met you saw Mr. Thaçi during the war, what was he wearing then? Can you recall?
Herën e dytë.
The second time, I saw him on the third time when he was armed and wearing a uniform in the village of Thaçi.
And it is stated here in perf 15 on page 5 of preparation note 1 that you saw Mr. Thaçi again at the Prabagan barracks together with Mr. Selimi. I assume that's Mr. Recep Selimi, is that right?
Po.
Yes.
And at that time, was Mr. Thaçi wearing civilian clothes or military uniform?
Nuk jemi sigurt.
I am not sure because there were many soldiers around. He was surrounded by soldiers, so I don't recall. I'm not able to know.
And what about Mr. Selimi? Can you remember what he was wearing? Was he wearing a uniform or civilian clothes?
Uniform.
In uniform.
Thank you. Now I would like to move on to paragraph 18 of preparation note 1, and this is about witness your 2002 ICTY statement, which is exhibit P01593 now, our trial. This paragraph 18, is about a meeting in Jablanice. And you said, according to the note, that the decision to hold the meeting in Jablanice was made by Mr. Ramush Haradinaj and Zali Veseli, as the two wanted the staff to be larger and to appoint its commander. You said Mr. Recep Selimi was also present at the Jablanice meeting, but you did not know his position at the time. Is that still your evidence, or is this correct?
E vërtet.
It is correct.
In your ICTY statement, P01593, page 11, page 11, you said that Mr. Recep Selimi was not introduced as a member of the KLA General Staff during the meeting. Is that right?
Oh.
Yes.
And you also said that you met him for the first time at Jablanice, the meeting. Is that right?
Oh.
Yes.
But you later learned that he was a member of the KLA General Staff, or as you said in your ICTY statement, the General UÇK headquarter. Is that still correct? You later learned that?
Po, për të gjithë
Yes. I have heard about all of these after the meeting in the village of Jebel. So when they become public, because there was a point in time when they became public. However, I can add that in Jablanica, Recep Selimi was wearing civilian clothing. He was not wearing a uniform.
Thank you. And do I understand your evidence correctly that you said you heard it from media publications, or that Mr. Selimi was a member of the KLA General Staff after the meeting? Jablanica.
Yes. Through the meetings and through the mass media means at the time.
And did you also learn what Mr. Selimi's position or function was, if he had any, at the time in summer 1998?
Jo, se di.
No, I didn't know.
Do you know now what his function was?
Sipas
According to what I've heard through the media, he belonged to the general staff of the KLA.
That's all you heard, nothing more. What he was doing, the general staff?
That's all.
Is that right?
nuk e di.
No, I don't.
Thank you. Let's move on to paragraph 25 of preparation note 1. Witness, according to this paragraph, you told the prosecution that you were told by Faton Mehmetai himself orally about a blacklist which included the name of an individual you knew at the time. And Mr. Mehmetai told you that this individual was a wanted person and undesired, and you thought that the person was wanted because he was a collaborator of Adam Yashari, close to the LDK and Rugova, and also a founder of FARC. Do you remember saying this to the prosecution?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And can you tell us when and where did Mr. Faton Mehmetai tell you about the blacklist and about the person who was not desired or undesired and not wanted? Or wanted, excuse me, wanted.
Faton Mehmetaj ishte
Faton Mehmetaj was part of the sub-zone number 3. I was a commander of that zone. Later on, he approached me because we used to have different types of relationships. We were kind of closer together. From what I remember from this case in question, this happened in the village of Prapachan. But it was in a different place in Prapachan. This is all I know about this matter.
So Mr. Mehmetai told you this in the village of Prapachan? Is that your evidence?
po, në fshat
Yes, yes, in the village of Prapachan.
Be a little bit more specific when that was?
nuk e di.
I don't know.
And now I have a question in relation to paragraph 28 of preparation note 1, a little bit further down, Mr. Court Officer. According to this paragraph, you talked about a person who was a journalist and a war reporter during the war and who had always been an LDK supporter. And you said to the prosecution, according to the note, that you saw the person's name in a notebook of Mr. Togar. By the way, for the record, could you tell us his real name? Who is Mr. Togar or Togar?
I learned the name of Togar after the war. During the war, I had no idea who that person was, but after the war, I learned that that person was Idris Balai.
Thank you. And you told the prosecution that Idris Balai or Togar told you that the person's name, the name of the journalist, was there because he was a member of the LDK and reported on the LDK and FARC. Is this correct?
Yes.
When and where did Togar tell you this?
When, I don't know. I believe he has told me this when we were less busier in the war area. So I don't know about the time, I don't know about the dates, I can't say you anything about that.
Witness, in your ICTY statement, 2002 statement, exhibit P01593, on page 19, it is recorded that you told the ICTY that Mr. Togar or Idris Balai told you this in the village of Resnic in late May 1998. Could that be the case?
Yes, Resnic, yes.
As far as you remember.
I believe I had a better memory back then. I don't remember it now. However, now that you're telling me that it happened in the village of Resnic, I remember that now. About the exact time, I can't tell.
My final questions are about preparation note 2, and we could have this preparation note on the screen, please, Mr. Court Officer. Do you need the exhibit numbers? Or the number? Thank you. And please go to paragraph 18. Witness, according to paragraph 18, you were shown by the prosecutor or the prosecution an exhibit, P00486, and you told the prosecution that you heard that Mr. Thaçi said the following, quote, and this is about the alleged satellite phone conversation between Mr. Thaçi and Mr. Ahmed Krasniqi. Quote, I will accomplish the mission with you very soon, unquote. But he also said you do not know who he said it to, whether it was to Mr. Krasniqi, on the phone to Mr. Zemai, who was standing next to Mr. Thaçi, or both. Remember saying this, discussing this with the prosecution?
Yes, I do.
Now, you told us yesterday, and this is transcript page 19458, that Mr. Thaçi allegedly said to a person you don't know, whether it was Mr. Krasniqi or Mr. Zemai, or to another person, quote, "We will be done with you soon," unquote. I would like to know now, what did Mr. Thaçi say exactly, if you can recall? Did he say, "I will accomplish the mission with you very soon," or did he say, "We will be done with you soon"?
Shumë shpejt do ta kryjm këtë.
We will very soon be done with you as well, but I don't know whether he referred this to Tahir Zemai or whether he referred this to Mr. Krasniqi.
Gjitha kjo ka qenë tension.
The situation was very tense when this was said. The voices would be heard, so there was clear that there was a quarrel between Tahir and Hashim.
I understand. And what did you understand was meant by this comment? How did you understand the comment?
Unë e kuptoj që ka qenë
The way on how I understand it is that the person was nervous because otherwise it's very difficult for someone to utter these types of words. And everybody was armed back then because Tahir was holding arms, Hashim was holding arms as well. There was an entire army there as well. So that's the only explanation I have to that saying. So I think that it was because of being nervous, and that's the reason why he said what he said.
What I meant was, did you understand this as a threat or as a good advice, or how did you understand it?
ma shumë kërcënim.
As a threatening, mostly.
And now I would like to go to paragraph 19 of preparation note 2. In this paragraph, it is stated that you told the prosecution that Mr. Thaçi spoke to you about the photograph of Mr. Rugova, President Rugova, that was hanging in your office, and also spoke about the LDK. And I assume that this was the meeting you had with Mr. Serapi and Mr. Thaçi in your office at Prabhajan. Is that right?
Po,
Yes, that's right.
And can you tell us what Mr. Thaçi said exactly, if you can recall? What did he say about the LDK? What did he say about the photograph of Mr. Rugova?
unë e thash edhe dje,
I said it yesterday as well. And to tell you the truth, I don't even remember what I said yesterday. But he was talking about the photograph of Ibrahim Rugova, and he was asking for it to be removed from the wall.
Did he make any other remarks about the photograph or about the LDK?
edhe në lidhje me
Yes, something about the FARC forces. Listen, that was the hugest of mistakes, in my opinion, because they understood that FARC forces were all with the LDK, but that was not the case. So there were people from all other political parties, there were volunteers, there were soldiers, but the idea, the opinion in general was that if somebody was with FARC, they were with the LDK.
Thank you, witness. Those were my questions. Thank you very much.
Judge Mitro.
Thank you, Judge Smith, and good morning, witness.
I want to start with a few questions relating to
Merida.
Good morning.
to you. I want to start with a few questions about Faton Mehmetai. Yesterday, you indicated that you understood Faton Mehmetai to act, among other things, as a political representative in the Dukajini area, but that you were not sure who he was acting on behalf of. Did I understand that properly?
Po.
Yes.
The registry, please bring up Exhibit 1D 50. Sir, do you recall being shown this document yesterday by counsel for Mr. Thaçi?
Po.
I do.
It purports to be a political declaration, number 7. It's dated the 13th of August of 1999, and it's attributed to the political directorate of the Kosovo Liberation Army. General Staff under the date. Can you please focus on the same paragraph that was read to you yesterday? It's the third full paragraph. It starts with the words new circumstances. Do you see that?
Io,
No, I don't. I can't find it.
In the Albanian, if you want to use that one, where the name Sokol Bashota is circled.
Ship.
Do you see that?
Yes, I do see it now. Yes, I do see the name of Sokol Bashota.
It says this: new circumstances necessitate the creation of institutions in which the broad political spectrum of Kosovo will be represented, with the intention of cutting off the manipulations related to the creation of these institutions. The General Staff makes it known to the public that Jakub Krasniqi, Javid Khaliti, Bardil Mahmouti, Hashim Thaçi, Faton Mehmetai, and Sokol Bashota are the political representatives of the KLA. The public announcement of the KLA political representatives facilitates the coordination of political activities at the national level. Do you see that?
Po.
I do.
Well, at least according to that document, Faton Mehmetai had become a member of the political directorate of the General Staff no later than 13 August 98. Do you agree?
Po.
Yes.
And I think I said 1999, it should be 1998. Now, do you know, and I mean during the war, were you aware of the existence of that political directorate and what its functions were?
Io.
No, I was not.
And it's no criticism, but is it fair to suggest that is because you were not aware of the inner workings of the General Staff? Would that be fair?
Mund tjetë.
It would.
Please bring up a document with ERN 056484. It's the same in Albanian.
That would be the next page in the English, please. And it should be the same ERN in Albanian, 056485. Thank you. Sir, I'll give you a second to read the document. Tell me when you're done. Okay, can we please scroll down the Albanian for the witness, please? My first question, sir, is are you aware or have you seen this document before?
This is the first time that I'm seeing it.
So,
So I see the general staff here and a signature, but there is no name of any person that has signed the document. I only see the general staff, no name of any person though.
So, if you look at it from its content, it purports to be a decision dated the 1st of September 1998. It has a number, 435-611, and it is said to come from the General Staff of the Kosovo Liberation Army, and it pertains to a decision by the KLA General Staff to appoint Faton Mehmetai to the position of Assistant Commander for Public Information in the Dukagini Operative Subzone Staff. And it says that the decision enters into force immediately. And in the English version, it's attributed to Recep Selimi.
Oh, Recep Selimi.
Oh, now I see. I see in the English version, but not in the Albanian version, though.
The question is whether you knew that Faton Mehmetai in the summer of 1998, 1st September 1998, had been appointed to be Assistant Commander for Public Information in the Dukagini subzone by an order of the General Staff, at least as it appears from that decision. Were you aware of that?
Yo.
No. This is the first time that I'm seeing the document.
And in terms of what you understood to be the role or roles, you said yesterday, of Faton Mehmetai, you said he played several roles, would search and order be consistent with what you understood him to be doing in the summer of 1998?
Yes.
It refers to the Dukagini Operative Subzone. Am I right to understand that this phrase or this word subzone was used until the end of October 1998 when the nomenclatura or the terminology changed to that of a zone? Are you aware of that?
At the time when the Dukagini plane staff was established, we were not referred to as a subzone, but as a zone. However, in the context of the zone, what we did is that we decided to go for subzone number 1, 2, and 3 under the zone of Dukagin. This happened earlier on. And then I don't understand why we would be referred to as a subzone in September, because this is a document that holds the date of September. So this is not compliant to what the situation was in the ground, but I believe that this is just a document written for the sake of it, but not reflecting the reality. In my opinion, this document has no value whatsoever. It's null.
Why would you say so, sir?
I say so because if you remember when I was talking about Fatyon Mehmeti, we heard through the radio communication that Fatyon Mehmeti was assigned as the political representative of the KLA at the Dukajeni plain, and that was something that nobody knew about. I remember it very well that together with Tahir and Ramush, so Tahir was actually asking both of us on who appointed him the political representative. Ramush Haradinaj said that I don't know that. And there were many problems in his village. Many other soldiers were against that person because they knew him very well. We knew him much better than the persons from the general staff. We knew what he represented, that he was a person that nobody liked. He was an isolated person. So he only had a uniform, he had a weapon, and that is all. Whereas what type of connections or what links he had, that's something that only he knows, or probably the general staff knows as well. However, this is another kind of document that goes to what I was telling you before. So he sometimes was representing the intelligence service, sometimes being a political representative. So now we see that he claimed to be an assistant commander for the public information. So when you say that he was an assistant commander of the subzone, then what subzone are we talking about? Because the commander was Ramush Haradinaj. In subzone number 3, it was myself, the commander. What subzone are we talking about here?
It's time for a half-hour break, witness. Please leave the courtroom with the attendant. Please do not speak to anybody about your testimony. We're adjourned until 11:30.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated. Please bring the witness in. Mr. Tetai, we will continue with questions from the panel. Judge Metro still has the floor.
Thank you, Judge Smith, and good morning again, Mr. Tetai.
Good morning.
Please bring up Exhibit P270.12, please. Sir, I'll give you a moment to read it in a second, but from its face, it purports to be a communique, number 62, from the KLA General Staff. It is not dated per se, but it's published in coaditore on the 15th of November of 1998. And I will go into a specific paragraph in a second. Are you able, sir, to read the content of it in the Albanian language? Yes?
Yes.
I'll give you a second to acquaint yourself with it. You will see that it deals in large part with the restructuring of the KLA that was happening in November of 1998. I'll give you a moment to read through it.
Do I need to read the whole text?
To the relevant paragraph, sir. But my first question is, can you recall whether you had seen that particular communique at the relevant time in November or late 1998? Do you recall seeing that document?
Io.
No, I don't. I see it for the first time here.
Please go to the bottom of the page in the English. Thank you. And for counsel, it will be the last paragraph, the above-mentioned institutions. Are you able, sir, to find a paragraph in the Albanian language which would be towards the end of the article where the name of Faton Mehmetaj and Rame Buja is being mentioned? Are you able to locate that paragraph?
Yes, I see. Faton Mehmetaj.
In the English version, this document, Communique 62, says the following, and it's the last paragraph, third sentence. KLA General Staff has nearly completed the restructuring and the internal reorganization, and has also made changes in its political department with the dismissal of Faton Mehmetaj and the appointment of Rambuja. And it adds, the KLA General Staff expresses its concern about and distances itself from the acts of kidnapping, irrespective of ethnic affiliation. My first question is whether you knew that from the middle of August of 1998 to sometimes in the middle of November of 1998, Faton Mehmetaj had been a member of the KLA General Staff Political Directorate. Were you aware of that?
Io.
No.
Aware of the fact that during this period, or part of this period, Mr. Mehmetaj was acting both within the General Staff, or more specifically its Political Directorate, and within your zones. Were you aware that he had this double hat, so to say?
Në zonën tonë sa ka qenë e dije,
I know when he was in our zone, with respect to the general staff and its political directorate, I don't know.
Again, I mean, no criticism of you, but is that because you were not fully informed about the nature and the extent of involvement, if any, of the general staff in your zone? Would that be fair?
shumë i saktë.
Yes, that's correct.
Ask you about another document, if you may help us on that point. It's Exhibit P 1600. It's a document you've seen again, sir, and I'll just go to two small points on it. You will recall, I hope, that this is or purports to be the record of a work meeting within the operational staff of the plane of Duqajin. It's dated the 25th of July of 1998. And if you can first focus on the list of the attendees, you will see that there's those present and those absent. Do you see that?
Po,
Yes.
Of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are first entered as an absentee and then it records the fact that you arrived in the meantime. Do you recall if you arrived sometimes into the meeting rather than at the beginning of this meeting? Do you recall that?
nuk më kujtohet.
I don't recall. With respect to meetings, it might be. I would need to read the entire text to know better, but it's poorly written and hardly legible in Albanian. I would very much like to read the entire text and give you an answer.
Aspect of it, and of course, do your best with your memory, and we'll take it from there. Can the English be scrolled down a little bit on this page, please? Here, sir, there's in the English version it's written that we have decided on Tigri as the commander of the police. Do you see that in the Albanian?
Po,
Yes.
In English, it says, we have decided on Tigri as the commander of the police and have obtained the approval of the general staff. The brigades have given support to the idea of the military police. Now, my question is, were you aware that the approval of the general staff had been sought or obtained for the appointment of Tigri as the commander of the military police?
këto është problemi.
This is the problem. We were regional staff of the Duqajini plane. When you mentioned Tigri, I remember the meeting. However, it intentionally says here the approval from the general staff. I'm saying it now. We, the operational staff of the Duqajini staff, issued this decision, and not the operational staff of the general staff. We brought this decision for Tigri to be the military commander of the military police, the commander of the military police in the Duqajini plane. So I've seen this in other documents as well. It often mentions intentionally either the Duca Gini staff or the general staff.
Bonds that you are not aware that search approval had been sought for the from the general staff, if indeed it had been sought.
Io.
No, I don't know, and I don't believe it was.
Thank you. I want to ask you about something else you already discussed, including with Judge Barte. It's the use of these blacklists containing the names of people who were being sought for. Do you remember discussing this?
Op het moment in io, hè, zoals circumscribe de
No, maybe I wrote it somewhere. It existed at the time. Maybe it was clear at the time, fresher. Names of the persons. I don't know.
Discussing and seeing a list of people with Faton Mehmetay, whom you discussed earlier. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
Area of responsibility. Who was using these lists, if you know, other, of course, than Faton Mehmetay? Do you know anyone else who was going around with these lists and making use of it?
Io, that.
No, only Faton. And to tell you the truth, Toger, if he had lists, he was not from that region. He didn't know anyone there. But there might have been a list in the hands of Toger in coordination with Faton.
That Kieli checkpoints in your area?
At the beginning, yes. At the beginning of the war, yes. And if I may. And because of these lists at the beginning of the war, we positioned guards in each village to identify those who would come in or go out of the village. If there hadn't been these lists, we wouldn't have needed guards at the entrance of the village.
Concerns about these lists and they are being used with Ramush Haradinaj?
I don't recall having this conversation with him because the Duca Gini Plain zone was divided in sub-zones. I was in the third zone. He was in the first zone. And we did not have enough time to clarify all these matters or to meet and discuss further or obtain further information about these matters.
In your statement, you also discuss the occasion where yourself was interrogated by Faton Mehmetay and Uyku. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Is Piotr Shala, is that correct?
I learned his name after the war when he was arrested, that he was Piotr Shala.
What sort of questions were you being asked by Mr. Mehmetay and whether Mr. Shala, Piotr Shala, also asked you questions?
They took me from my village because of my background or the allegation that I was a military officer, took me to the mosque, and both of them questioned me.
What questions? What were they asking you?
I've mentioned this before. The question was, after the Glojan attack, there were 3 zones. Dechan was one of them. People would go to the market and there was free movement of people. In general, people were free. And I went there for personal health-related reasons. I had a hernia at the time. And I needed some medication from the orthopedist. And because I had gone there, I don't know how he learned this. He wanted to tarnish me or raise allegations, claiming that I had gone there for other reasons. That's what I can say about this. What they were claiming was not true. However, their purpose was to tarnish me. Later on, I learned, when I was still in the Tukajini Plain zone in Rugova, in October, newspaper Zori Kosovo wrote an article. He wrote an article raising allegations and tarnishing me and other people in the zone. I was told this by other people who had access to the article. I was in the war in the region of Rugova. He wrote the article from Albania.
In your understanding, on what authority could he ask to interview you? Or interrogate you, I should say.
The only person at the time who had a military uniform and was armed, fully armed. And he moved freely, including in the Chan and all other zones, knowing that he was the only one. We hadn't seen a uniform yet, and I saw on him the KLA uniform. This was the beginning. It was very early.
Is it fair to say, and again, put it in your own words, but is it fair to say that you felt you had no choice but to comply with his request to be interrogated?
Yes, certainly. I knew the person and I went with him. Can I add something? In 1993, I was sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment for having established the Ministry of Defense in the municipality of Dechan. I was released in 1996, and Faton Mehmet, in my house, came in his capacity as a reporter from the newspaper Zjimi and asked me questions about Rugova. What was my position, my stance? Every question he asked me about President Rugova, who was my idol, whom I supported, and of whom I was a soldier of the institutions of Kosovo, he came to my house with this specific purpose, and Because at the very beginning, initial stages, he could not persuade me to move away from the Rugova line. Then at the beginning of the war, he took me and interrogated me. I don't know in what capacity he did this.
Thank you, witness. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Judge Gaynor.
Thank you.
Sorry to interject. I apologise for interrupting. I just wondered if His Honour Judge Betrot could assist me with a reference for the question at transcript page 54. Began, you mentioned discussing and seeing a list of people with Faton Mehmetai. I found the reference for discussing. I just wondered what the reference was for and seeing, actually seeing the list.
Witness, did you witness? Witness? Witness?
Yes.
That you discussed with Faton Mehmetai. Did you also see the list or see the list in his possession?
No, I discussed this with him.
Point.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Witness, I just have a couple of questions. The first concerns the number of subzones of the Dukaijing Plain zone that were established at a meeting you attended in late May 1998. Now, yesterday, this is page 19501, the prosecutor said to you, and during this meeting, you were the one who proposed to divide the area into 4 subzones. Is that correct? You said correct. You remember saying that, Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Statement, which is P1595. At page 10, I'll just read out the relevant parts. You said, and you're referring to this meeting in late May 98, you said, I decided to speak and explained that the Glodane Regional UCK HQ should be divided into 5 operational subzones, numbers 1 to 5. I suggested to Ramush Haradnai to become the commander of zone number 1 and to divide the commander positions for the other 4 zones between 4 commanders who would have the full responsibility for each subzone they were assigned to. And then you give information about zone number 2, zone number 3, and zone number 4. And you refer to these as the 5 subzones. So it's somewhat unclear from your ICTY statement if there were 4 or 5 subzones. Could you help me understand that, please? Were there 4 or 5 subzones decided upon at that meeting?
Van Beert.
Thank you. In the meeting in Glojan for the division of zones, I was the one who discussed this. There must be minutes of the meeting as well. We first set up the staff of Glojan, and the commander was Ramush Haradine, who at the same time was commander of Zone 1. And the second zone had Shemseddin Çekay as commander. Zone 3, Rustem Tetay. Zone 4 was divided by the river Lombard between Bistritz and Dechan, was Ishnich. Zone 4 was Skender Reja Mete and his deputy Gani Juka. But the 5th zone was neutral because of the proximity of the Serbian forces with the town of Dechan. That zone was under the command of Adem Ukhaja. It is true that I mentioned 5 zones, but when giving evidence here yesterday, we talked about 3 zones, and I probably stopped at the zone I was commander of. But it is a fact that there were 5 zones.
the other parties here. I'm referring to adjudicated fact 256, which appears to be based on paragraph 58E of the 29th of November 2012 judgment in Haradnai at the ITTY. Mr. Witness, the information we have reads as follows. Subzone 5 was commanded by, as you said, Adem Uke Hachai. Excuse my
Great.
Correct.
Villages of Karabreg, Voksh, and Drenots in Dechan municipality.
Fact.
Correct.
Second point I wanted to address was yesterday in one of your answers to counsel for Mr. Thaçi, you said, if somebody knew that the general staff existed back then, it would have been much easier for myself to speak and to give the testimony before you. The commander Ramush Haradinai was not aware of the fact that such a general staff existed. Or probably he knew and he never admitted that. That I don't know. Unquote. This was in the context of a discussion about a meeting of the 20th of August 1998. Now I'd like the court officer please to bring up 2D026. What's coming up on your screen in a moment, Mr. Witness, is a document you were shown earlier by counsel for Mr. Vasily. It's SPOE 225760, if that helps. You saw this document before, Mr. Witness. You can see it's signed by Ramush Haradinai. It's dated.
Yes.
The 2nd of July 1998. And we can see that Ramush Haradinai is sending it to the archive and to the general staff of the KLA and to nobody else. Do you see that?
Yes.
In the document, if we can scroll up a little bit in the English, it says, as we read earlier this morning, quote, "This is to inform you that the meeting held in Yablanica on the 23rd of June 1998 elected the commander of the operational staff of the Dukajini plane, the deputy commander, the chief of staff, and the deputy chief of staff," unquote. Now, Witness, I just want to put it to you that this, to me, seems, if nothing else, an indication that Mr. Haradinai is very keen to act in a cooperative manner with the general staff by sending this notification. And he certainly knows that there is an entity called the general staff which is in existence. Would you say that's a fair way of reading this document?
If we refer to this document, that's the logical conclusion we would draw. However, in those circumstances, if it indeed existed, we wouldn't have ended up with the frictions we had between FARC and the general staff of the KLA. If the general staff of the KLA had been set up from the beginning, we wouldn't have needed to discuss these matters. But we were in the position where we had to take initiatives on our own, what to do next. And all these soldiers, volunteers, were expecting us, commanders, to tell them how to act and what to do. Therefore, if we refer to this document, it is logical. However, I am convinced that if Ramush or Ahmadinejad heard of this, he heard of this later on, after the Jebel meeting. Otherwise, from what I know about Ramush, I know him as a person, as a professional, he would have informed us about the general staff of the KLA if he knew. The staff came into existence later, much later.
A very simple question. Do you accept that at the time that he signed this document, Ramush Haradnai certainly knew that an entity called the General Staff existed? Do you accept that?
Can I please see the document in full so that I can see the date, if possible? Because I'm having a look at the version in English, and there I can see the date. It's the 2nd of July.
Zoom it out a little bit. You can see at the very top it's deleted on...
Yes, I saw it now. Yes.
In July 1998.
What I think is that they have written this document much later than that date, but they've decided to put the date of the 2nd of July, because I've seen many other documents that involved the Dukagjini plane. So those were documents referring to decisions or to meetings that had happened, but I think that the documents themselves have been written in a later date. And this is the reason why I'm convinced that Ramush Haradinaj was not aware of the General Staff at that time.
Explanation as to why Ramush Haradinaj would have written a document like this at a later date and dated it 2nd of July 1998?
Not Ramush. I don't think that Ramush was the one writing it. These documents are written by somebody else, and they were just offered to him. I'm sure that Ramush Haradinaj did not have the time to write the documents or to see what date those documents were produced in, because there was no other reason why he would behave otherwise. There was no reason for him, for Ramush, to write the documents at a later date and to put the date from a time before that. However, it is my conviction that the document itself has been compiled later on, and they have put the date of the 2nd of July, because if this date was true, I would have known about the General Staff. It's not only Ramush in question here, it's myself as well. I was a deputy commander back then, and I would have known about the General Staff. Seli Veseli was my boss. Yes, I can see his name here as well, I think, and it's not possible for me not to know that the General Staff existed back then. I think that there was a pretext, there was a reason as to why somebody has written these documents later on and put a date that preceded the date of the preparation of the document. I have no reason why not to accept that information if that were to be true. On the contrary, I'm happy for my name to be there because that's the fact. I was holding that position back then. And I had the same position as it is written here. Therefore, I have no reason whatsoever to say the contrary if I knew that what you're saying was the truth.
To a separate issue. It concerns the period after the meeting in Shah. Yesterday, this is page 130 of the provisional transcript for the benefit of the other parties, you said, quote, the General Staff with their orders after the meeting in Jabal, they exerted pressure in all forms for the FARC forces to cease to exist and to have only the KLA in existence, unquote. Do you remember saying that yesterday?
Paul, Dre.
Yes, that's fair.
In knowing a bit more about what you had in mind, where you said the General Staff exerted pressure in all forms for the FARC forces to cease to exist. Could you explain a little more what you had in mind when you said that?
Disponimi I gjitha fshat.
All the villages, all structures of the Dugagini plain, upon the arrival of the FARC forces, were in one direction. They were in favor of having Tahir Zema as the commander of the zone, which became a fact later on. But some people were not happy with that decision, and that is the reason why the meeting in Jabel happened. I told you yesterday that they distributed those envelopes to us with the orders.
In mind to make the FARC forces cease to exist?
I can't remember anything else, not for now at least.
Very well, those were my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Thank you, Judge Smith.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions, Mr. Quick?
No, thank you.
Anything from the Thaçi defense?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon now, witness. Just a few follow-up
Good afternoon.
on what you were asked by the judges. First, I want to ask some follow-up questions on these lists that you were asked about by Judge Bartha and Judge Matro. I want to read something you said in the Haradinai trial and ask you if this is still your testimony. And this is for the benefit of the parties, IT 0484, T3597 to T3689 at page 3671, lines 15 to 22. And here's what you said. I didn't ask him, but before the Toger came there were some lists drawn up in some villages. These were lists drawn up for personal reasons. These were lists drawn up to compromise people, but these were not the lists drawn up by the Toger. These were lists drawn up by other people, but they were attributed to the Toger. I'm not saying this was done by Ramush. However, in some villages, there were some people who belonged to political parties. They had political differences among each other. So probably this could be the reason for the lists. Now, did you say that in the Haradinai trial, and is that still your evidence?
If you're reading out of a document, I've said that, and I stand by that. But if you are to ask me about those issues now, I'm not able to give you an answer. I can't remember everything.
So do you have any recollection of what you meant when you said there were people who belonged to, in the villages, there were people who belonged to political parties and they had political differences amongst each other? Do you know what you were referring to?
Paul?
Yes. Before the war, there were political parties that were established, and there was some party-related competition in a political pluralist society of the time. So there was jealousy, and because of jealousy, that's the reason why there were fractions, and probably that's the reason why I made that formulation out there. So this is how I think of it now.
The creation of these lists to the jealousies and rivalries, political rivalries within the villages? Do I understand that correctly?
Fact.
Yes, that's a fact.
You also testified, and I believe you've said it again today, that these lists were created only at the beginning. You use the word beginning. Am I correct that when you refer to the beginning, you're referring to the period of time before the creation of the subzones?
Po.
Yes.
In late May 1998? Do you agree?
Po.
Yes.
Refer to these lists, you're talking about lists that must have been created before late May 1998, correct?
Po.
Yes.
Is that this is a time period which you say there was no organization and things were chaotic. Is that correct?
Fact.
That's a fact.
Turning to a different topic, and this is the role of Mr. Mehmetai. Now, you were asked some questions by Judge Matro concerning Mr. Mehmetai's appointment as a political representative in August of 1998. I'd like to take you chronologically through his appointments and ask you a few questions. Now, yesterday, you were shown a document, and if we could have the document back on the screen, please. Just 1 second. Yes, U001-4078. Now, witness, this is decisions, a document recording decisions taken at the meeting in Yablanice on 23 June 1998. And if we could scroll down a little bit. Yes. It says in the middle of the page, after those in attendance presented all of the advantages of uniting and coordinating the forces, it was unanimously decided and unanimously declared that the regional staff of Ducagini be founded with the following composition. Do you see that?
Po.
Yes, I do.
One of the persons that's unanimously decided at the meeting for appointment as Intelligence Services Officer is listed as Faton Mehmetai, correct?
Po.
Yes.
That he received his appointment as a result of this local gathering and a vote that took place, a unanimous vote as to what position he would have in the Ducagene zone.
Po.
Yes.
Into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
U001.
Your Honor, apologies. Just before it's tendered, there's I think a discrepancy between the Albanian and the English as regards intelligence or information with respect to Faton Mehmetai's role. I just would like that noted on the record.
If we could, if it's a translation issue, then obviously we want to correct it as well. So.
There's a procedure for correcting it. We would suggest you.
MFI it and then
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah,
Yes,
that way
yeah.
we won't lose track of it. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
So we will mark it MFI for now, and we will await a translation resolution.
Thank you, Your Honors. U001-4078-U001-4080, and the English translation will be marked for identification with the exhibit number 1D00188, currently classified as confidential. Thank you, Your Honors.
We'll leave it confidential for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, witness, I'd like to show you exhibit P01386, please. Witness, do you recall seeing this document before?
Can I please see the whole page? It can be. I'm not sure.
Dated the 30th of July, 1998, and it purports to be Ramush Haradinai's authorization for Faton Mehmetai, Intelligence Service Officer, to establish the structure of the KLA Intelligence Service in the subzone of responsibility of the operation staff of the plane of Dukajin. Now, would you agree with me that the 30th of July, 1998 is a time period when Ramush Haradinai is working together with the officers that had come from FARC?
Yes.
That this indicates that it was Ramush Haradinai who appointed Faton Mehmetai to this position in the operations staff of the plane of Dukajin.
This is true because I can see Ramush's signature here. This is a decision or an authorization by Ramush. However, what I said before about previous documents is true for this document as well. And what I mean by that is that these documents have been written later on and they have been predated. That's how I conceive them.
We were asked questions by Judge Matro about Faton Mehmetai's appointment as political representative on the 13th of August, 1998. I believe you mentioned that in your SPO interview as well. And so I'd like to just read to you what Mr. Mehmetai says about that appointment and ask you a few questions about his version of what happened. And for the benefit of the parties, this is 056292, Part 5, page 19. Mr. Mehmetai is asked, quote, "There was no public appointments of you to the political directorate?" And he says, "Yes, in the political department." Question, and when did this happen? Answer, in August of 1998. Question, and can you tell me how it happened? He says, Nasim Haradinai and Yashar Salihu proposed me for the post as the head of the political department. Question, proposed you to who? Answer, General Staff. I heard about my appointment in the news. Nobody asked me whether I wanted or not to be in that position. The first time I heard about this was when it was broadcasted by Kosovo Radio Television. I've never contacted the general staff during this period, and I've never communicated with the general staff and in the position of a political representative. Rambuya went to Rambouillet in my place. This is the story. Question, but how did you find out that a Nassim Haradinaj had proposed you to the general staff? Answer, I asked when I heard my name. Question, when it was announced? Answer, yes. Question, and did Ramush Haradinaj, did he consent to your appointment? Did he agree? Answer, I heard about my appointment the same way he heard about my appointment the same way I heard about it, in the news, and he said, good luck with your new appointment as a political representative. This is how it happened. Question, so did you ask Nassim Haradinaj why he, answer, at the time he was in Sweden. Question, so he appointed you from Sweden or proposed you? Answer, yes. Now, my first question is about Nassim Haradinaj and Yashar Salihu. Now, do you know who Nassim Haradinaj is?
Po,
Yes.
është një kushëri I afër.
He is a close relative of Ramush Haradinaj, and he comes from the village of Glujan.
Did you know who Yashar Salihu was?
Po,
Yes.
një njeri, një adhëtar,
An intellectual, a patriot. He had all the good qualities someone could have. He was from the village of Botush.
No?
Po,
Yes.
Was Nassim Haradinaj, did he live in Sweden at the time?
po.
Yes. From the early days.
Salihu, where was he at this time, if you know?
Në Zvicër.
He was in Switzerland.
So do you have any reason to dispute Mr. Mehmetai's account of how it was that his name came to be in Political Declaration number 7?
Shumë e thjeshtë.
It is very simple. Neither Yashar nor Nassim were part of the general staff of the KLA. So how is it possible for the both of them to propose someone for a certain position?
About that. They were prominent in the diaspora, weren't they?
Nuk po shohin.
I don't know.
If they were perhaps fundraisers in the Homeland Calling Fund and had influence.
Vendina tret, po.
Yes, yes. I heard about the Homeland Calling Fund later on. Yashar Salimuk was responsible for raising funds. Yes, that's true. About Nassim, I don't know anything about him. I don't know on whether he was involved into raising funds. About Yashar, yes, I've heard about him.
Mr. Mehmetai's account that he never actually had any contact with the general staff other than his name being announced in Political Declaration number 7. Is that correct?
I have no facts to object to this.
Showed you a document from the 15th of November, 1998. You had left Kosovo on the 8th of September, 1998, correct?
Jo, s'është vërtet.
No, that's not correct.
Unë jam
I left Kosovo together with the group of Prapachan. So we left from the zone of Prapachan on the 8th. But from there, we placed ourselves in the mountains of Rugova. So I've been there up until the end of November, or probably half of November. It was about mid-November or end of November that I left. That is part of the Dukajin area as well. So I've been in the war area all that time. I did not return.
Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Mistich. Ms. O'Reilly?
Just one very brief matter. Could we have P1598 on the screen? English and Albanian, last page, please. And while the court officer is getting that up, Mr. Teta, do you remember a man called Emrys Jamaili?
Should I wait for the documents to appear in the screen, or?
Remember him from your time there?
Yes, I do.
Was?
I have met him for a very brief period of time. So that happened in the village of Glojan before the war, and if I'm not mistaken, his nickname was the Computeri.
So, can we go to the last page of the doc in both English and Albanian? Right down to the end. And you can see, Mr. Tetai, that it appears a computeri with the initials EXH is the author of these typewritten notes. You see that?
Yes.
So it would seem that Mr. Emrys Jamaili, that is computeri, was someone else in the Dukajin zone at that time who also was able to typewrite documents up and did so quite frequently, including meeting minutes. Isn't that right?
It can be.
Thank you, Ms. O'Reilly.
Still nothing from me, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes, just two questions, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
It relates back to the questions you were asked about Faton Mehmetai and the lists or blacklists. And you were asked about this by the prosecution in February 2020. I'm looking at part 4 of your interview, 074569. Part 4, page 9, line 4. I'll just read it back to you, sir. The blacklist that you know Faton Mehmetai, it's not that I've seen Faton in possession of the list. It's just what I've seen on the, on the stuck on the posts. I haven't seen Faton with a list, in his possession. I just want this to be understood. That's what you told the SPO in February 2020, isn't it, witness?
I said that today as well. This is a question that I received earlier on today, and I gave an answer to that. I have the same answer to that.
Thank you. And you were also asked about who compiled the lists, and at part 3 of your interview, page 22, line 6, you said, I cannot be any more certain because I did not see him compiling the list. And that would also remain your evidence today, wouldn't it, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Thaçi, that completes your testimony. There will be no more questions. You will be excused from the courtroom now. We thank you for being with us, for giving us your testimony, and we wish you well in the future.
Mon ami Vaughan,
No,
Can I say a couple of things?
your testimony is completed.
për shkak të opinionit, tonis.
I wanted to say something for the sake of the opinion, but
We are adjourned until 9 a.m. on Monday. Thank you all.
All rise.
Thank you.